So champions come and go, but heroes, especially superheroes, never disappear. They live forever in their admirers' consciousness. My hero, one of my great heroes is the Honourable McKenna, Canada's former Minister of the Environment and Climate Change and Minister of Infrastructure. She chairs the UN Secretary General's high-level expert group on net zero. Sorry about that. Commitments, and is the CEO of Climate and Nature Solutions. Catherine founded Women Leading on Climate and serves as Senior Research Scholar at Columbia's Climate School. We at CCL are grateful for her leadership in uniting business, NGOs, and experts in forming the Pan-Canadian Framework on Clean Growth and Climate Change and Canada's greenhouse pollution pricing. Catherine, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Can everyone hear me?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you. I really wish I could join you. We have a team retreat. So I'm actually taking a retreat from my team retreat, Climate and Nature Solutions. So now I do a number of things, but including scaling climate and nature solutions globally. I want to recognize the territory I'm on. I'm on the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples here in Ottawa, still in Ottawa Centre. So anyone who's from Ottawa Centre, it was great representing you as a member of Parliament. So look, I thought, I know I'm doing about 20 minutes and then we're going to open up to questions. I thought I'd talk, yes, about the policies we need, but also the ambition we need before I get into specific policies. So I left government, as you all know, and actually it was quite a while ago now. It's over 2 years. And my focus, why did I leave? One, to focus on my kids, because it was pretty hard during the pandemic. I turned 50 the year I decided to leave, and I was like, okay, what do I want to do? What do I really want to do with my life? So one, my kids had been in politics. I think when I started, there were 4, 6, 8, and now one's at university, one's headed to university next year, and one is going into grade 11. So clearly spending more time with them was critically important, but also directly related to that was more ambitious climate action. That means in Canada, yes, although to be honest, in Canada, we're going to have to push very hard, and we're also going to have to realize it's a fossil fuel climate crisis, and so the problem are fossil fuels. And that's not a political statement, so that's just a scientific fact. I'll talk about that in the policy phase, but when I left, I wasn't sure what I'd do. Lots of people wanted me to work for them, run foundations, do a bunch of things, and I just decided, you know what, I'm going to do my own thing and figure this out. I did swim in all the Great Lakes, 2 kilometers with my swimming buddies. I used to be a competitive swimmer. I still swim a lot, do a lot of open water swimming, but that was great. But it also reminded me what's important. And it's you know, the nature, the beautiful nature we have, being with friends, being able to enjoy the outdoors. And so one thing that came up quite quickly was the UN Secretary General asked me to chair his high-level expert group. I won't say the actual name because it's long and boring and means not a lot, but it was really on net zero commitments of corporations, financial institutions, cities, and regions. Because while we focus so much on what are governments doing at the national level, these other players are critically important, as we all know, and we all need to drive climate ambition if we're going to do, yes, reach net zero by 2050, but as important is reduce emissions by half by 2030, so that we can stay on track for 1.5 degrees. So I agreed to chair this expert group, and it was great because it was really about being super practical, and I really am a practical person, and it was about setting out standards and criteria. If you were going to put up your hand, these are voluntary commitments. They're being regulated in Europe, and we're doing some disclosure here in North America, not enough. But if you're going to put up your hand and say, I'm committed to net zero, which, by the way, 90% of GDP is covered by a net zero target, you got to do the work. You got to do the work. There is no free pass. As I say to my kids, you want to get an A in school, well, go do the work. It's not enough to just show up in class. And it's interesting because it actually is really focused on what I learned in swimming. Was sure you have a long-term goal. So I think people are probably focused on the Olympics. You know, the Olympics are happening this summer. I can't see the room that well, so I can't see if you lift up your hands, but does anyone know Summer McIntosh? If you don't know Summer McIntosh, it's going to be her summer. So Summer McIntosh is oh, I can see the room now. Okay. Does anyone know Summer McIntosh? Yay. Okay. So we got some cheers. You should all know Summer McIntosh because Summer McIntosh is going to win us some gold medals. And Summer is 16, maybe 17. And I think it's a good analogy that we're trying to win. We're trying to win the most important race at all. It is actually ensuring a sustainable planet. So like Summer was probably around 5 when she started swimming, or 4. And probably one day she's like, I'm going to win a gold medal at the Olympics. And everyone was like, ha, ha, ha. But Summer was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And that's called a stretch goal. So I often hear from folks, oh, it's really hard to be net zero by 2050. It's really hard to keep limit warming to 1.5 degrees. Yeah, I'm sorry, folks. Hard things are hard. And I know I'm talking to the converted and people who are, pushing your friends and your relatives and businesses and governments. But you can use this analogy if it helps. Like people say, wow, it's really hard. Are we really going to be able to do it? I said, well, one way to never do anything is to not have a serious, ambitious stretch goal. So Summer McIntosh had a stretch goal. No one believed she could do it. And what did she do? Every day she got up early, went and swam in the pool. And then she went home, went to school, did whatever, then went back and swam in the pool. And then she did that over and over and over until there was a swim meet. And then she got up in the blocks and then she swam. And it was never going to be fast enough initially, obviously, for her to get a gold medal. And so at the Olympics, she just kept on doing that. And she innovated and she had coaches and she had supportive people. And now she is where she is because she actually took something very seriously and was disciplined and held herself accountable for actually meeting shorter term targets, because you can't make a longer term goal without meeting shorter term targets. So that's really what I did for the UN Secretary General with the experts. And the experts were across the board around the world, half women. I insisted it had to be half women. And they were everything from, yes, scientists, yes, environmentalists, but also the former governor of the Bank of China, someone who was a CEO, a former head of state, yes, a recovering politician like me, and a group of people who were just really practical. And this is also important because when I think communications is so important on climate. So one, like, yes, have a long-term goal, but you better get up on the blocks and meet your short-term targets. And if you're not, then you got to try harder. And you got to innovate and you got to adjust, because 2030 is critically important and it's not very far away. And there's no way we can limit warming to 1.5 by 2050 if we can't meet our 2030 targets. That's just a thing. A lot of people want to delay. Fossil fuel companies always talking about CCS because they don't want to talk about 2030. They want to do nothing now. Just want to make a lot of money and continue burning fossil fuels. That's not good enough. And that's why the report was helpful, because we were trying to take the drama out of climate. Just make it a very boring accounting exercise, because that's what this is. Your missions, as I say to folks, okay, we had 10 recommendations. One was regulate, so really only 9. I work in 3s and 10s. And the recommendations can actually be boiled down to 3 things. So when people say, oh, I don't understand, it's really complicated, hard. No, it's actually not. It's hard to do. It's not that complicated in a way. Your emissions need to go down now. Your money needs to go from dirty to clean now. And below that, you need to think about people and communities, which is a just transition. Those are the things that need to happen. And so, yes, people can say it's really hard. Yeah, it's hard to do. Hard things are hard, but it's all measurable. So that's what I've been really focused on, is really translating that, whether it's with the corporate clients I work with. I only work with high ambition clients, and we choose who we work with, like people that are critically important to this, with conservation organizations, working with indigenous peoples, with clean tech companies that have the solutions to help this. That is my frame, because we have to be very focused. We don't have a lot of time here, especially towards 2030. And if folks aren't doing the work, then they need to be called out. We need to create ambition loops. We want people to be positive. We want business to be supporting more government action. And with carbon pricing, we had the Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition. It was great to have environmentalists, but I had to point to business, because you may have heard someone that aspires to be prime minister just every day in the House of Commons say job-killing carbon tax. So what I would do is then read the list of the companies, and I say, oh, they're not actually job killers. This is how many jobs they've created, and they support carbon pricing. So that is a bit of how I see things right now. We got to be very disciplined, try to take the drama out very, very hard, as I well know, and you all probably know. We have to reward ambition, but we have to call out people that are pushing against it, including through disinformation campaigns, but also personal attacks and beyond. What do we need to do in Canada? Okay. So you sometimes see me write op-eds or pieces. I try to stay removed from Canada, but I am a Canadian who cares greatly, just a citizen now of Canada. So carbon pricing, we just got to keep on doing carbon pricing. Like, I know, one, it's very irritating that we're actually not dealing with facts. So people write articles, journalists write articles, and journalists play a critical role. But it's often like, on one hand, there's the government doing carbon pricing. And on the other hand, there are these folks that say it's terrible, it doesn't work, costs a lot of money. That's not a fact. That is what they are saying. So it's not equal. On one side, the government is giving all the money back. We have a price on pollution. It increases the incentives to reduce emissions. It's a conservative, small c conservative policy supported by Brian Mulroney, supported by Gordon Campbell in BC, supported by Jean Charest in Quebec when they brought these in. And it actually works. But in the same time, we're fighting disinformation that's promoted often as like a fact. Like, it's not a fact. That's job killing. It's just not a fact. So we got that, but we got to keep on keeping on. It was unfortunate, and I have said this in an op-ed, it was unfortunate that the government put a pause on heating oil. Because the reason that heating oil, and by the way, gas is so expensive, do you want to know why? It's because of the cost charged for heating oil and gas by oil and gas companies. It's not a revenue neutral carbon price where we give the money back. Obviously, it's not that. It's like actually that. So unfortunately, when you fall into a trap where you kind of say, well, we better put this pause on because heating oil is expensive, you're sending the messages actually counterproductive because you're kind of signaling, well, actually, it's carbon pricing. So I don't know. You can read my op-ed on this. I was like, I don't want to be too hard on the government, but we have to be disciplined and we have to always communicate properly. And this is an affordability measure, because the people that are the poorest generally are not the ones that have multiple houses and multiple vehicles and, have a huge carbon footprint. They often, live in smaller apartments. They take public transit. And so they are going to get more money back. It's actually a policy to fight inequality in a way. And I was very focused on this. Second thing, we need a cap on emissions. The government has talked about a cap on emissions in the oil sands. This is critically important. Why? Because oil and gas is the largest source of our emissions. Once again, just facts. Like, we have to get beyond, like, people are fighting about a bunch of things. I'm like, I don't know. There's facts. There's facts. Fact is that now I think maybe someone has this 28% of our emissions maybe are from oil and gas. Well, and growing. So not going down. So other sectors of the economy are doing the work. They're reducing their emissions, whereas oil and gas emissions continue to go up while they say they're committed to net zero. You're not. We have our report. Our report says your emissions need to go down, and that is not your emissions intensity. That is your overall emissions. Yes, intensity is important, but reality is the planet only cares about your overall emissions. We need emissions to go down. And unfortunately, they have not done that. But they should welcome it because they say they want to be net zero. So fine, just reduce your emissions. It's not a drama. It's just like, so that has to happen. You should certainly push the government to do that. I'm very concerned that that will not happen in time. Obviously, it's a challenging time for the government. But what I learned in politics is actually trying to give in to special interest groups is not a political winning strategy. It's not. Like, stand for things that people believe in. And don't back off, do a better job communicating, do a better job engaging, like the citizens climate, like all these different groups. I've said religious groups, labor groups, young people, grandparents, economists, scientists, environmentalists, citizens coalitions, all of those people were standing on the Supreme Court supporting us when we fought carbon pricing. I thought very hard about what the image was to the resistance. You may remember the resistance. Yes, I remember the resistance. You can go Google Maclean's magazine from 2017 or 18 to see who the resistance is. Many of them are not around. Some of them are kicking around or proxies are, but I needed the resistance, which is people. We need a zero emission vehicle standard. We need to actually ensure that there are zero emission vehicles being produced. It's very hard to get zero emission vehicles in many places. Both Quebec and BC actually ensure that there's a standard. So you have to produce so many zero emission vehicles. And then we need the green taxonomy, very boring, and every time I say green taxonomy, I want to fall asleep. So this is a problem with climate. but it's actually, what are the rules if you're going to invest in terms of what is green? So I now do work with the largest financial institutions. So say Temasek in Singapore, they want to invest in the transition. They need to know, how will something be classified? So it is important. And by the way, new natural gas is not green. It's just not green. That doesn't mean people can't go waste their money and have a stranded asset and invest. They can go do that, fill their boots. I mean, I'm not for it at all, but it's not going to be considered green. And unfortunately, this has been sitting for some reason at the Department of Finance. I have no idea why, because it means we're missing on billions of dollars being invested in Canada. People have choices, investors have choices. They're going to the US, they're going to Europe, they're going to other places. Canada needs all hands on deck. This costs no money. It requires discipline. It requires recognizing that new gas is not green. That's just a thing. We would be laughed out of any room if we said it. So those are things that need to happen. And I know you're great at organizing campaigns, but I think the most important thing is I think about the geopolitics and how hard it is. We need to and I consider myself, someone who needs to be really focused on this, including with the UN Secretary General, is activating people, because we need to create pressure on governments that don't want to act. And we need to encourage governments who do, but are working in a very difficult environment. And that's the same for business. And the way we do that is you look at polling, and I've been paying a lot of attention to this because I've been trying to think, what is the new agenda for climate? And I don't mean new agenda. We got to keep on doing the same old, reduce our emissions and scale money to clean and worry about a just transition. But we need to engage regular people. And if you look at the global polling, 80% of people around the world want more ambitious action on climate from their governments. 80%. But if you look at the newspapers, you listen to the news, or God forbid, you listen to some right-wing politicians. I'm not going to call them conservatives because, by the way, Brian Mulroney cared a lot about climate change and pricing using market mechanisms, the same with a number of other conservative politicians. But certain right-wing politicians, if you just listen to them, you'd think that this was a massive polarized debate. I think that is not true. I think that a lot of it is played up on social media, who should be held responsible in particular for disinformation and for hateful comments, especially, often led by other politicians that then get amplified through algorithms. But I do think we need to just show that people support climate ambition, and we don't have time. But I think it can seem hard because I go to COPs and I'm like, oh my gosh, COPs are like the most elite of the elite. Even for environmentalists, they're there. By definition, it's an elite. Who's going to a COP? And I think we are going to need more country level action, just like you folks. And we're going to have to figure out, how do we bring everyone on board? Like, from farmers who may not be totally convinced on the science that climate change is man-made, but are seeing the impacts in their community, to soccer parents whose kids can't go play soccer because it's too dangerous with the wildfire smoke, and beyond. I think these networks are really important, and there's some existing networks that are amazing. Canadian Associations of Physicians for the Environment. If we make climate a health issue, and we have doctors actually talking about it in the context of a health issue, like, do you have air conditioning? What are you going to do with smoke? Like, you've got asthma, or, you've got an elderly, parent or grandparent. I think we just need to make it a people thing. And as I always say, I don't care why people care about climate action. It was like, great if you care about it because it's a science issue and we got to deal with it, science and physics issue. Great if you care about it because it's a social justice issue. Great if you care about it because it's a national security issue, or it's an infrastructure issue, or it's winning the economy, clean economy in the future. I don't really care, but we have to start talking that we can reach people based on what they care about. Not everyone's going to care about the same thing, but I think these great networks like you folks are really important. So that's my pitch. Just keep on pushing. Reward good action, but also call out things that are not consistent with what needs to be done, in particular in the next 6 years. I see some clapping. Okay, hopefully some people, it's always very weird when you're sitting in your room, you're like, okay, I don't know. Did anyone think that was useful? So hopefully some of what I said is useful and resonates.
I'm sure a lot of it is useful. Thank you very much. We will open up the questions now. Anyone in the audience have a question? If you do, please come on up and we will get to it. Yeah, that'll be a... Okay. Yeah, anyone have a question, please come on up. We need to use a microphone. Oh, it's okay. You can use this one. Just stand in front of the screen so you can see it.
Hello, Catherine. Yeah, so one of the things we've been told at Citizens Climate Lobby is that we played a big role in Canada bringing in the carbon tax with rebates. And I wonder if you want to comment on that. What kind of a role did we actually play?
Yes, you guys were amazing because it was really important to show that this was something that had broad public support. And so I'm trying to remember how your campaigns, if there was a write-in campaign or if people, lobbied their own MPs or just spoke publicly or wrote op-eds or did everything. You may have done all of that. But it was really important because, as I said, like all of this can't look like it's like coming down from above, this elite thing. Catherine McKenna, I'm from Hamilton, by the way. I'm not like, I'm not like an elite, but coming down from above, these amazing policies that are terrible for people. We needed people to actually speak up and say, this is actually what we want, and this is good for people. And by the way, giving money back, because we just needed everyone to keep on saying we're giving money back. That's important. To reinforce the messaging. I mean, one thing the government was not great on, because we were following the Harper government, we said, well, we actually aren't going to use money to actually, promote issues. Well, that's ridiculous. Like government, people are entitled to know they get money back from a key government policy. So that was very challenging. You may have seen us do events at H&R Block because we didn't have to pay anything. They were just like someone who wanted to promote that you could get money back and use their services. But it was very hard. So we needed everyone to be out there talking about the policy and supporting the policy. So thank you very, very much. You may have been involved in the litigation too, either directly or indirectly. All of those things were extremely important to me, and to really landing the policy through multiple elections. I'm very scared, very, very worried now that for a variety of reasons, I mean, we could be once again fighting this, and it could be more challenging because the issue is not really carbon pricing. I think it's a broader issue at the government. And so that is tricky because it's definitely up for grabs. Pierre Poilievre has been like literally at the House of Commons since 2016, yelling about carbon pricing and job killing or whatever. So it's not a news story. It's much more challenging. And if he gets elected, he's going to get rid of it. We saw that with Jason Kenney. We saw it with Doug Ford. Getting rid of pricing was the first thing they both did.
An example of a factoid I was speaking of a while ago. Basically, you repeat something often enough, people start believing it and repeating it. That's the sad part that we have to deal with. Any other questions?
And it works to our advantage too. I mean, like, yes, disinformation and people repeat it, but if you actually repeat, you get the money back. It's just you need a lot of people to repeat it, and probably you need social media campaigns too. But yeah.
Absolutely. Come on up, Tom.
Thanks. Hi, Catherine. Yes, you are a climate hero. I just wondered if you could elaborate a little bit on your couple of comments. One was about the green taxonomy you were mentioning towards the end of your remarks. I think that had to do with climate finance, and the other thing was we're always looking for how to make the connection so people can relate and demonstrate that they care about climate, whether you can't breathe the air, which seems a sort of fundamental concept. So any other tips about that? So that's a two-part question. Sorry. Thanks.
Okay, so the first one, now I'm already forgetting because I'm so focused on your second one. The first one, the green taxonomy. Yeah, the green taxonomy is all about sustainable finance. So I mean, investors are looking, and why I talk about investors, I'm talking like really big investors, sovereign wealth funds, pension plans, are now focused, okay, how do we invest in the green transition? But especially in Europe, but increasingly they have to report. So they have to classify, how are their investments? Are they green or not green? Basically, I mean, fossil, when we say not green, it could be like fossil fuels, opposite of green. And so the reality is we do not have a way of categorizing investments, even though the financial sector actually came up with a green taxonomy themselves, unanimously supported. Was it perfect? No, it's kind of a made in Canada thing, but it's actually not bad. And the thing is, like, it was kind of a gift to the government. They didn't have to do anything. Finance could have just said, great, here it is, green taxonomy. If you're going to invest and you want to know if something's green, it's got to be classified in here. If you're investing in new gas, it's not going to be green. But I think because finance doesn't like the idea that gas won't be green, I mean, you can't make it up. I don't know. It's like very weird, but that they won't do this. And they're probably under a lot of pressure from oil and gas. And the one thing I would say is that something I'm very not happy about is if you're on Twitter, you can go to Oil and Gas Lobby Bot. And when I see the amount of lobbying of the federal government, including ministers, senior public servants, and senior political staff, it's bonkers. And that has a real impact. It has an impact, yes, of course, because they're there pushing their own agenda, but also just has an impact your own psyche, because you're like, I don't want to be hated. Maybe we can come in the middle, find some, like, there's no necessarily middle ground on things. It's like, you know, it's a science and physics issue. And also, like, the bottom line is oil and gas companies making massive profits, giving them back to their shareholders, largely outside of Canada, while they're causing the climate crisis and demanding subsidies. Like, it's not a thing, while people are paying more for heating oil and gas. So I do worry that part of the reason that we see it's very difficult for government to act is sometimes, like, literally the Department of Finance in that case, and sometimes other cases. So what else can you do? I mean, I think these groups, like, what I would like to see and what I'm kind of pitching to the Secretary General and beyond is we actually need a broader coalition. So all of the different groups, could they come together like we kind of did the way I thought about the interveners in the Supreme Court? So we had the resistance, yes, all the provinces that were conservative wanted to fight us on pricing, and maybe like a taxpayer association or something who's just honestly, it's just like basically entrenched interest for conservatives. Anyway, we had that. And then on the other side, I was very thoughtful about who represents Canadians. And if we could do more to bring together Indigenous communities, health professionals, Canadian associations for physicians in the environment, they have a broader network, your huge network, the Green Churches Canada, there are labor unions, all of these different groups that tackle climate in a different way based on their own, who they're trying to speak to. I actually think that's more powerful. And if you combine that with the polling that actually shows that the majority of Canadians want more climate ambition, you're actually making a story, which is actually just a true story. Like, we need to do more in climate. And by the way, these are like, Canadians are saying this, and you make it an issue, like top 3 election issue. I think that's important. There are limits to that because of course, you know, the problem is in politics, people don't just vote for one issue anyway. Like, it could be people are tired of the government, for example, and they vote on that, and that's their issue. And they don't, you know, these other issues aren't important, but people have to understand that they're not on their own, that it could be farmers for climate. It could be anyone that all these people are pushing. 2, there's a reason to push, that it's important to whatever they care about. And 3, that you could lose it all. Like, people also have to know the consequences. As I say, elections, you know, have consequences. They do. You know, you make decision and, you know, people may be willing to live with that consequence, or they may have other reasons to voting in a particular way. And I see a number of hands, maybe, I can't really tell, but I'm happy to take multiple questions, and I'm Irish, so I've got to be a little more disciplined. And I just changed the screen and I saw my climate hero, Rosa Galvez, why am I talking about sustainable finance? She will do much better job. Rosa's like the best. So support Rosa.
That's a great segue.
Whatever Rosa says, you must do.
I love it. Catherine, thank you. And while you've never won an Olympic medal for swimming, I would like, on behalf of us, to award you the biggest climate medal you could ever get. And it's fueled by our gratitude. And guess what? It's carbon neutral.
Oh, nice.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. Well, anyway, I hope you guys have a great conference, and you're going to hear from an amazing speaker. I think Rosa's next. So you go for it, Rosa. Do whatever she says, And I feel badly, I didn't answer everyone's questions, but I'm sure they're great. I pass them on to Rosa. That's my gift to Rosa, paying it forward.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.